Tonight, Auditor General in the line of fire from current and former MPs who are demanding payment of 29 million cedis in ex gratia arrears, as the AG stands firm, insisting the MPs should not be paid.
It's his opinion on what account shouldn't be paid. And indeed, the Honorable Bagdon, the second deputy speaker, has even made a report on that.
This is Top Story with Evans Mensah.
And Top Story is always brought to you by Bond Savings and Loans. Your success, our passion, is also brought to you by Gas and Cement, the nation builder, and Vodafone. The future is exciting. Ready. Tonight we are hearing from more members of Parliament who say the state owes them more than 29 million cedis in ex gratia arrears dating back to 2005. Now, many are now taking on the Auditor General, Daniel Domilevo, who appears for now to be the only stumbling block between the MPs and the ability to access the funds. The Auditor General has, in a letter to the Chief of Staff, argued that the demands of the MPs should be ignored. The Chief of Staff has written to him, asking him to do an audit of these claims, so pave way for the payment of the funds. Well, he's turned down that request. I'm sure you know this by now. Here's a background to this tussle.
The Forum for Former Members of Parliament has reportedly written to the Chief of Staff, Frema Osei Opari, requesting payment of outstanding arrears for 139 government officials who served until 2008. They are said to have been paid about 70% of their ex gratia by the Mills administration, which took over in 2009, leaving 30% of the amount in arrears. This list includes Oseche Mensah, current Chief of Staff herself, Frema Osei Opari, Albert Kandapa, John Ejekumukofo, Joe Gate, Cecilia Dapa, Kweku Ajiman Menu, Pakwesi Indum, Alan Chermantin, among others. The Chief of Staff reportedly wrote to the Auditor General, Daniel Domilevo, for verification of the request, which was based on the Chinri Hesse Committee report. But Mr. Domilevo, in response, said the former government officials were not entitled to the said payment and urged the Chief of Staff to ignore the request.
So what were the Auditor General's reasons for stating that they were not entitled to it? And let's just quickly recap for you. He argued that the impression has been created that it is the committee and not the president who determines the emolument for the legislature. He quotes Article 71(1) of the Constitution, and he says he provides that the salaries and the allowances payable and the facilities and the privileges available to the legislature, judiciary, Auditor General, and others shall be determined by the President, and that is something that he's highlighted, determined by the President on the recommendations of a committee. He goes on to argue that my understanding of the constitutional provision is that the entitlements of the legislature are those approved by the President and not necessarily the recommendations of the committee. So fundamentally, if they were paid part of what the committee recommended, then the Auditor General conclusion is that part they got is all they deserve, because that's what the President then thought and believed they deserved at the time. And so you cannot make a claim that merely because the committee had made the recommendation for you to be paid a certain whole, if the President decides to pay you a part of that, then, and since in the interpretation as offered by the Auditor General, that part is one that the President solely can determine, then that's all you get. That's one of his reasons he gave. He also makes the point, it is also public knowledge that some MPs were and are undergoing police investigations for receiving double salaries, which implies overpayment. But several of the names are included in the list for additional payment submitted already for this particular purpose of paying for the arrears, per office of the President letter dated 22nd April 2020. And therefore, he believes if you are already being investigated for double salary, I mean, why should you even make a claim for you to be paid more? You have to wait for that political process to exhaust. He also says in this letter that he wrote that it is then he goes to address the substantive matter of the report which the MPs had written to the Chief of Staff using as a basis to demand the payment. He says even that report was rejected under the Mills administration, and then another report was set up, the Yang Sing report, which found, he quotes, that the report it rejected that Chinehese report. And the Auditor General says that report was rejected because there seems to be more than one final report of the Chinehese committee, that the Ishmael Yamsing committee cannot confirm which of the final reports was allegedly approved. He even argues that it was simply immoral to be making such a claim at this time when the economy is in crisis. Today we've heard from the majority leader, Evans Mensah, by the way, who is also part of those who will benefit if this particular amount, the arrears, are paid. He's on the list. He disagrees quite strongly with the position adopted by the Auditor General.
President Mensah's administration is on record to have said that the Chinehese committee, that report was never approved by Parliament, and so they were not going to pay the recommendation made by the containing the report, which recommendation had been accepted by President Kufuor in respect of the members of Parliament. Eventually, though, they paid some amount, I think in the region of about 70% or so of what was required to be paid, and they said they're going to investigate and pay the remaining later. The remaining amount never got paid, which is what colleagues of that Parliament, and it has to do with the 2004-2008 Parliament.
The Auditor General argues that it shouldn't be paid. Do you agree?
It's his opinion on what account shouldn't be paid. It didn't have to be approved by President Mills. It had to be approved by President Kufuor, who did it. Unfortunately, when they went to the Jubilee House to look for the document, for whatever reason, that document does not exist at the Jubilee House. The report signed by Kufuor disappeared. At the time I played the role of I was the deputy majority leader, and I made some comments about what we did. I included it in the report that was with me, which the Honorable Dr. Tony came for me. He never returned it. So that report is not even existent in Parliament. However, I think we've managed to see some of them, and indeed the Honorable Bagdell, the second deputy speaker, has even made a report on that. So that is where we are. Thank you very much.
Joining me on the telephone line right now is a current Member of Parliament, MP for Adanse, Asokwa, who himself is on the list of those who are owed these arrears. Mr. Katie Hammond, I'm grateful that you could join me on Top Story.
Yes, Evans, how are you?
I'm doing great, and how are you too, sir?
I'm not happy with my friend John Develos' letter. Why does he want to deny me my rightful entitlement?
Why do you think you're entitled to it?
Yeah, but you just heard the majority leader, and of course all the letters that you alluded to. Chief of Staff is written to him, and I found something quite interesting. I mean, he seems to make the point that some members at the time seem to currently be undergoing investigation for some supposed double payment or whatever. I mean, now what has that got to do with the likes of Katie Hammond? What has that got to do with the Evans Mensah? What has that got to do with the Honorable Georgia Who and all that? I don't quite get that limb of the argument. I mean, he could simply pay hours, suspend the payment for those he thinks is investigating or somebody else is investigating. Why does he have to do a generalization? But that is by the by. I'm not sure if he's getting it all right. But I guess Evans Mensah, the current leader, it's actually made a point. I recall this matter quite clearly because on the fringes I was around when it came to the determination of these issues. There was a toing and throwing for some time before we obviously came to some sort of finality on this matter. If the Auditor General forces the issue to the extent that he appears to be doing, there might be a need for the Supreme Court to be involved, because he seems to be saying that it is the President who determines everything.
But on the face of the Constitution, he is right, is he not?
Yeah, no, he may be right. The President determines, but in consultation with the committee that he himself appoints. So if he appoints a committee and the committee returns a document or a verdict to the effect that we're entitled to 100% payment, on what authority would the President then be saying that, well, no, actually they're entitled to 70%, considering the provisions of Article 296 of the Constitution? I'm not sure about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's as you know, the committee's work will be a recommendation, but the President has the final say. Based on circumstances prevailing, the state cannot afford, then definitely you get what you get.
No, I'm not sure it works like that. I mean, it doesn't work like that. It's not the President capriciously, arbitrarily saying that way because of the ABC. It is clear. The Constitution makes it very clear what the committee appointed should do, and then the committee returns its documentation, its findings to the President with a recommendation. If the President is not happy with the recommendation, it might be for good reasons. It just simply wouldn't be a question that the President didn't agree and the President agreed on 70%. I don't think the President's got power to. But
you recall when former President Mills took office, and in fact the Auditor General makes reference to this matter, that he set up another committee, the Ismail Yankson committee, to review that earlier report, and they rejected categorically. I mean, the report that gave you all that handsome amount.
Well, I'm not sure about that. That's why I said there's been too many and flowings about this matter. The Yankson report might have to be retrieved. The first one was that is it the Chinese committee report? Is that one?
Yes.
Is that the one that?
Yes.
Quite a few things. There was a lot of misunderstanding, a lot of misapprehension, a lot of things. But I do recall that ultimately, that's what Richard Evans Mensah alluded to. There were we had some pieces of evidence in place. I do recall that Tony Edu, whose name has been mentioned, Dr. Tony Edu, actually picked up some documentation from us, Evans Mensah, to help in the calculations and making sense of all that had happened. Let's calm down. We believe that a lot of water is spiked under the bridge, but that's not to say that for that reason our money shouldn't be paid. Our colleagues who are at home, I think very few of us, I mean, from that parliament, the 2008 parliament, are still in here. They have been campaigning for a very long time now. They are asking for the just entitlement. We were paid 70% of what we knew we were legitimately entitled to. Some big names have been mentioned. I'm not sure we are looking at the names and what they represent as we speak. We were all members of parliament at the time, so I'm not sure about this plugging out of names, this and this and that. Well, he was to investigate whether they were legitimately members of parliament. Yes, we were at the time. Were the findings made? Yes, findings were made to the extent that we should be paid it. Edward Yankson or whatever. You see, there were some constitutional issues about this. It was then President Kufuor who was supposed to assent to make the recommendation in this respect. How is it that it came to be President Mills who had to make it? Was even another matter. And then to appoint another one to investigate the Chinese report and all that. You know, it introduced a lot of cacophony and discord into the discourse. Evans, we know that we're entitled to that. I'm not sure that Ghana is so broke the moment that Ghana isn't able to live up to its legitimate entitlement. That is not the debate. But the debate is the legal question of whether we're entitled to it or not.
And you think you are legally entitled to it?
Oh, I mean, absolutely.
I mean, I even heard you in this conversation reference that if push comes to shove, the Supreme Court might have to make an interpretation.
Because of the issues. Because of the issues. Number one, Was it for the president to simplicity and say that, well, there was a recommendation of 1,000 cities, I've changed it, I'll give you 700 cities. Was it for the president? Did he have power to do that?
Do I hear you say that this is something that you intend to challenge?
Let's watch the space. Let's watch the space.
But Mr. Hammond, the amount of money we are talking about here, from what the global figure tells me, is 29 million Ghana. It's a lot of money. How much of that are you owed personally?
I haven't calculated that. Okay. I don't quite know. I do know my name is on the list.
Yes, okay, but do you know how much? Do you know how much exactly you are entitled to?
No, I don't. As well, there was some confusion around the figures. I mean, one committee came up with one, the other committee came with another. The various it's a bit confused, but I take it that it is now settled. The figure which finally would have gone to the chief of staff would have settled it. I think would have stamped some finality on it. So we will be working on the basis of what went to the chief of staff and, of course, what eventually went to the auditor.
But Mr. Hammond, you certainly do not need that money, do you?
Come on, let's talk about the law now.
We've talked about the law.
The law is that are we entitled or we are not entitled to it? Full stop. If we are not entitled to it, that is fine.
But what about our ability to pay you?
Whose ability to pay?
I mean, the state's ability to pay.
You are starting from the second level when we haven't climbed the first hurdle. The first hurdle is the question of legality. Let's get it right. Those members of parliament, including some of us members of parliament, we are entitled to the money as we discussed. If it is agreed that we are or we are not, then we look forward to the second segment of the argument.
Yeah, I mean, I asked that question. I mean, you said this possibly could come from some interpretation, but I'm asking you based on where we are as a country right now at this time, when the economy is in crisis because COVID-19.
You and I don't preach the exchequer. You don't know what it is.
I mean, I've heard the finance minister say yesterday at Jubilee House that we simply are in a difficult place. We can't afford to pay you the money.
You are turning this whole argument into the ability of the state to pay. That is not
but that is important.
No, ultimately it might come to that. Well, it will come to that, but that is not the point. The point simply is that are we entitled or we are not? I mean, in the fullness of time, there is a clarity to it. Supreme Court or one authority or the other settles us and says that no, those MPs were or are not entitled to it at the end of the matter, because no payment doesn't arise. But of course, if it is settled, the legality of it is settled, that the MPs are entitled, then we move to what you are now talking about, whether the state immediately has money to pay or the state certainly take the decision that you are entitled to it, but in view of the parlous state of the economy, of the coffers,
so let me. If it comes to that, are you willing to forgo?
Listen,
I'm just curious. If it comes to that, are you willing?
Curiosity. You think we are doing? You know what happened to curiosity? The cat. It was curiosity that killed the cat. Don't do curiosity business here. Let's do what is on the plate now. What the issues are. Evans, the issue is that has our friend Mr. DeMillo gotten it right or he's gotten it wrong? Let's litigate that. Let's debate that. Let's find a solution to that. If it comes out that he is right and we are wrong, so be it. But if it turns out that we have been deprived, our colleagues out there have been deprived of their monies, then a mechanism has to be looked at. You know, you are worried. Ghana owes a lot of money that it's planning to pay or it's arranging to pay in the fullness of time. Nobody is asking the government to pay tomorrow if they don't have the money.
Yeah, but the Auditor General himself raises this question. I guess that's what I'm asking you about the timing of the demand.
But you see,
you don't see how the timing is a bit insensitive to the millions of Ghanaians out there who currently are struggling. The Auditor General himself raises that. That's what I'm just putting it. You disagree with him?
I understand the point. No, I disagree entirely with it.
You do?
Because, no, absolutely, I disagree
about the timing. When millions are out of job.
If you shout and I talk across that, nobody will hear the other. Can I make the point?
Most definitely.
I'm making my point, and then you are shouting across. How did they hear that? No, the Auditor General is wrong in this respect. The matter before him now is the legality of the payment. Are we entitled or we are not entitled? If he says yes, we are entitled.
He says you are not entitled. No, he says you are not entitled.
It's one thing altogether. But you see, he's done some he's done what they call, I think it's a Zimmerman or something. It's a Zimmerman. That's just the position of opposite. In one respect, he's saying that we are not entitled to the full stop issue and the argument. What is the second leg about the government? Country doesn't have we can't afford it. How does that come in? We are not entitled, so nothing will be paid anyway. That's the issue and the argument. But he introduces another element of confusion. They can't pay. Well, government can't pay because we are entitled. You see, he could have said that, okay, fine, I see that they are legitimately entitled, but there's a difficulty. Well, make your first recommendation, they are entitled. Leave that to the state to decide, the exchequer, to decide whether they have money to pay or not to pay. You seem to be making the argument on the basis that there is no money in the system. Does that then nullify his first finding that we are not entitled? Is he now saying that we're entitled but there's no money in the system? You see, it's a bit difficult. This particular paper has been dogged by difficulties, misapprehension, confusion, cacophony, discord from 2008 up to now. I mean, what is this? We didn't have this problem after 2012. We didn't have this problem after 2016. Hopefully, we won't find this difficulty next year. What is this about this particular one, 2008? So all the difficulties that went on with the Mills administration, the people around him, to the extent that Kufuor's committee, which was a executive committee recommendation, was toppled by another committee, which it seems to me was illegitimately set up. It's a bit difficult. Let's get this thing sorted out legally through the courts.
And tell me this, because I know this fight was begun by not necessarily those who are currently in Parliament, but those who are ex-MPs. And there's a sense I get when you talk to some of them, and they say, listen, some of us used to be in Parliament, we actually have become paupers, and that is why we need this to be addressed now. Is it that bad, Mr. Hammond?
That in terms of what?
In terms of what they tell us about how financially constrained they are, almost become paupers after they've left Parliament and struggling financially. Is it that bad?
I couldn't speak for anyone of them, honestly.
You know them. I mean, you know some of them.
No, I know them. But I haven't met quite a few of them I couldn't say, for example, the Honorable Joaja who might be making that statement. Making that statement. I do know that the Honorable Member for Buakwa South, who now happens to be the President of the Republic, will be making that argument. I'm not sure that the Chief of Staff, who was a Member of Parliament for Yawaso Wagon, will be making that argument. It also, Majority Leader, Mr. Bonsu, I'm not sure he'll be making that argument. I think Dr. Adokufor or Safmafo, there were names in there. So I'm not sure it fits the situation of everybody. Okay. So I will be able to take that.
But certainly for Mr. Hammond, I mean, I know you're not a man of little means. You definitely have
you completely out of track.
I am.
Good afternoon.
Well, Mr. Hammond, I'm grateful that you joined me.
Thank you.
That's Katie Hammond. There is the Member of Parliament for Adansia Sokwa. What do you make of this? 29 million cedis ex gratia arrears that the members of Parliament, both current and former, say they are entitled to. You just heard there, Mr. Katie Hammond say that watch this space because the Supreme Court may have to come into this matter if the Auditor General keeps to that position that he's expressed already, rejecting a request by the Chief of Staff to verify the claims being made by the members of Parliament. We're yet to hear from the Chief of Staff office on this matter. We are working on that for you to get a sense of how the office plans to deal with this matter. Remember, the Chief of Staff herself is on that particular list because she was also in Parliament. But listen, it's your money. Share with me what your thoughts are on this. Katie Hammond and the minority leader believe that they are entitled to it. They were paid 70% of the ex gratia, and they want the 30% to be paid. It's dating back to 2005. Are they entitled to it? 0244 340 437 is a WhatsApp line. I want to hear from you. This is Top Story.
Hey, I say, mix the cement in the correct proportional.